Welcome everybody. Hi, this is the first of a couple of videos that we'll get to throughout the rest of the semester, this distance learning thing. First of all, I hope you're all okay and your family is okay and you're all not undergoing too much of a hardship. I know it's kind of weird. I find it very strange to be sort of sequestered like this. Even though we can go out, it's not the same thing. Anyway, we're doing our best here in my little office, and there's the pollock. See, I told you about the pollock. Anyway, so we've got some things to do. Our class is unique in the sense that we don't have to worry too much about quizzes and midterms and finals such as they are. I'm not really changing too much of the course as it looks on the syllabus. Really, I'm just going to stick to what's there, and what we cover, what we don't, which is what I would normally do. I would ask I'm negotiating myself through all of the Blackboard stuff, and what I've come up with is these videos, which at this point you know are on YouTube, which has been a chore, but my wife's been helping me. But I think that's working out. There's a discussion board or a forum board, I'm not sure, on the first page of Blackboard, and you should look at that. That's where I'm going to post questions, ideas, things for discussion, where I need you guys to offer your opinions. That's part of how I know who's attending, so to speak. So please make a point of checking the discussion boards on a daily basis. I'm going to be adding things up there, not every day, but mostly every other day if I can, and posting videos as often as I can. I know it's spring break right now, but I figured I would just jump in on one particular topic here. Anyway, so I need you to be part of this. I mean, I'm going to be doing my part from home, reading your essays, being on the discussion board, and making these videos, which I kind of enjoy. It's kind of fun doing it, although I really do feel better when I'm in front of a room full of people, as you can probably tell. I'm a little bit more sedate here, but I can't go totally bat crazy in my own office. So so anyway, I need you to pay attention and maybe take notes. Sit down when you decide to watch one of these videos, relax, have a cup of coffee or something with you, and take notes, listen, stop at any time you want, rewind it, go over it again. If you have any questions, write them down, email me about them. Sometimes I talk too quickly, sometimes I make references that maybe I don't explain. Treat it the same way you would if you were in the classroom. If you had questions, don't just assume, oh well, I missed that, I'm not going to get it. I'm more than have got little else to do except answer these questions online, so I'm happy to do it. You should also know that, for instance, today's video requires you to have that article, Why Do We Love Superheroes, which I think I gave out in class. You should have a hard copy. If you don't, or if you lost it, the link for it is on Blackboard. It's somewhere on there under the assignments. You'll see it there at the bottom or the top. I don't know where it pops up, but it's there. It's a short article. It's a really good one. I'm going to just quote parts of it in my discussion today. Not a long discussion. I'm going to try to keep these videos as short as possible. Certainly they're not going to be the same, hour and a half, 2 hour classes that we have in Hofstra. I don't know if you can hear the music. It's a nice little jazz playing in the background. I'm trying to make it as peaceful and nice as possible. So just imagine that the responsibility for this course is still on you and me. We still need to work, because I'm still going to get your papers, and I'm still going to read them, and I'm still going to grade them, and I want to give everybody as high a grade as possible. So let's just remember what the goal is. The goal is to finish this semester successfully with as high a grade as we can get, and I'll do everything in my power to make that happen. But I need your input. I need you to make sure that you're paying attention so you know what it is we want you to do. So let me just stop for a second and say, again, all of the papers are ultimately the same in the sense that we're looking at something in pop culture that you feel reflects or represents it in some way. It doesn't have to be good or bad, it could be some other way. And we've looked at a number of things, art and fashion and all the stuff that you know about, and we're going to be looking at other things as well. I am trying to think of a way to work in this virus business, but I see that as being more sort of global, obviously, than specifically pop cultural. Although it'll certainly be remembered as part of your youthful culture, such as it is, your generation. So I don't know that we can do that. If you can think of a way, let me know, and we can talk about it. You can put it on the discussion board or something, or maybe it's an idea for a paper. I'm not sure. I'm not feeling it, but I'm not going to say no. We'll have to see. You guys are free to be as creative as you'd like. Before we left for this, before this happened, we were about to talk about heroes. So I know that really wasn't one of the choices I gave you for the papers, but some people, as I mentioned in the email, some people already had started the papers or already finished their papers on heroes, and before we even got to discuss it in the classroom. And it's a popular topic. I like it as well. So I'm going to talk about it now during spring break. I'm just going to cover that topic as best I can in a few minutes here with the article that I supplied you with, and that is now supplied. So in case anybody wants to, we'll include it as a possibility for the next essay, in addition to the other things that we'll get to next week and the week after that. So this is for those people who thought they couldn't write about this, but now can, and hopefully I'll be able to make some sense out of it in this short video. So you should have the article, Why Do We Love Superheroes? There it is in front of you. That's all backwards. Anyway, I have it, so we should look at that. But before we do that, I'm just going to talk from my notes the way I would in class. What else was I going to say first? As I said, there'll be videos, there's discussion, blah, 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 blah. Take notes. Good. Okay. So, heroes. First of all, if you are interested in this topic, and I think we all know about this, and again, we're sticking with the United States. There are all kinds of ways of thinking about heroes beyond the borders, in other cultures. We're not necessarily talking about those. We're trying to stick to the American pop culture if we can. First thing to do is, of course, to define a hero. I'm not sure. You would have to think about what it means. In a WSC 1 class, I talk about definition, and there are a number of kinds of definitions. There's the simple one that comes just from the dictionary. The term eludes me right now, but there's that one. Just look it up. That's what it means. And then you've got the larger, expanded definition, which includes all kinds of things, analogies and examples, and using negativity and all kinds of things to expand the definition of things. And there's also the stipulative definition, which is a particular kind of use of the word, whatever the word may be. So, for instance, if you were going to talk about, love, you'd have to stipulate: is it family love, romantic love? What kind of love are we talking about? And that's how we would zero in on something. So, in this particular discussion, we will stipulate that the hero is a superhero, hence the name of the article and all that. Which is weird because, and I might have mentioned this in class, how do we define superhero? So let's just make sure that if you are going to write about this topic, we're not talking about actual people who we think are heroic, firemen, police persons, and fathers and mothers and other relatives who we think are heroic. Not that they aren't, but they're not going to fit this particular definition. We're thinking of the ones that we find in fiction, that we seem as a culture to want to have, not the ones that we actually do have in real life. We're thinking about the ones that we create for ourselves, because that's the one that gets to somehow reflect the culture. Depending on which decade you're in, there's a theory that that's the superhero that you need or you deserve. So, for instance, if you could talk about a hero, you'd have to zero in on the kind of discussion you want to have about those things. And for instance, back in the old days, Superman was the only hero anybody needed. I'll get to him in a minute. But today we've got a billion of them, and even just that fact alone, that we suddenly have an enormous, inordinate amount of heroes, may be worth discussion. Why do we have so many? Why do we need that many? It's almost as if every individual has his or her or their own hero. Is that what we need? We also have heroes that have come back and are now popular that weren't. Like Wonder Woman is suddenly enormously popular. Not so much back in the day. She was okay. She was popular enough, but she was eclipsed by all of the male heroes in Marvel and DC. So you want to think about those things. And I've already gotten some online from you all, and some of them are just these. I never heard of these people. They're just these little people from other countries. We download them, and suddenly they're our hero, and we follow them, which is also part of today's culture. So let me just run through some notes. Here are some things the kind of things that I would bring up in class, hopefully for discussion. That I would ask you to. And I know all of you would be jumping in with your opinions and your ideas, and this is so weirdly done alone here in the room. But the definition of a hero basically is again, there's that term I can't think of. The lexical, that's it. The lexical term definition is the one you find in the dictionary, which means it's an exceptional courage, nobility, that is high moral character, generosity and honor, and strength. Right? And that's a broad definition of a hero. And again, since we're specifying superhero, another problem, I think, or challenge is how do we determine superhero when some of these people like Batman and Iron Man and who else? Other people aren't really super, they just have great equipment. How do we reconcile that? And so that's something that we need to consider. But this idea of hero goes way back to myth and religion. Hercules, for instance, superhuman strength. Never got the impression he was very bright. I don't know. But anyway, tough guy. I believe he became a god, a small g god, after he died back in mythological times. Achilles, of course, an obvious metaphor for mankind, humankind. Samson from the Bible, with Delilah cuts his hair, he loses his strength, but then he gets it back. So there's heroes in myth and religion that teach us something. Again, you might ask yourself, do the heroes that we have today teach us something? Or does the hero that you have chosen, for instance, as your focus, that you think reflects the society in some way, does he or she or they teach us something? Is there a moral, is there a lesson to be learned here? It's obvious that they don't make them like they used to, right? Certainly the heroes that we're talking about today are, while they were mythological or religious, they were also men. There was also, which is still true, might made right. That is, strength, physical strength was quite an important aspect of all these guys and gals, which I don't know if that's important today. Certainly certain amount of might, but I think sometimes these heroes, I can't think of their names now, but would depend upon their powers as opposed to their actual strength. And of course, as I said before, now there is a glut of superheroes. Why? And where will it end? And will we become saturated to the point where everybody's a hero and no one's a hero? So there's that. I mean, we've even gotten to the point, you all know this, where we actually have a movie, Superman versus Batman, which personally I find ludicrous. I think you know. Anyway, so there's that. I mean, why would we even have a movie like that? I was thinking, is it the popular culture sort of attempting to thin the herd? Let's have our heroes fight amongst each other until they kill each other off, and we're left with the strongest or the smartest one, which is ridiculous. It's taking all this to another level, which we don't need. Of course, the question also begs to be asked: why do we need these heroes? Well, they're fun. They're just fun. We like to watch. We like the escapism of watching the good person beat the bad person, good versus evil, and all that stuff. It's very basic. We see this in all kinds of levels, whether it's just a bad Hollywood movie where the good guy, beats the bad guy, or something like gets revenge, or just makes it all happy at the end. But there's also, again, there's that sense of, this is the important part, I think, the idea that cultures get what they deserve. For instance, just to use James Bond, again, not a superhero, but certainly a long-lasting hero to lots of people, certainly people of a certain age. And the first James Bond was, if you go back and look at, Dr. No or Goldfinger, with Sean Connery, that guy was, it's hard to watch sometimes because it's quite sexist. The world had not come around to liberating women the way it has today, and he was still great. It was still a great movie in terms of watching this guy, this suave, tough, gadgety, erudite guy save the world against great evil doers. It was great to watch. He always wins. He was a static character, interestingly enough. Talk about characters, static and dynamic characters change significantly. James Bond stays the same. We like that. Of course, we've had different actors play him, and things have changed in the movies. The suave, debonair, erudite James Bond in the early days is certainly not the Daniel Craig of today. We've had a number of other kinds of James Bonds throughout. There have been, at one point, fewer Bond girls, and there are more Bond girls, and then fewer again, depending on the political climate. So things change, and even his boss in one of the movies calls James Bond a blunt instrument of some kind, a caveman, a Neanderthal, which is the absolute opposite of the first James Bond. So you ask yourself, okay, well, when I go to watch James Bond movies now, it is not, I don't think I'm watching a James Bond movie anymore. I'm watching some sort of an action movie. James Bond is gone. That kind of hero doesn't seem to be relevant or needed anymore. We have other kinds of heroes. We have the quiet ones like Jason Bourne, the sort of secretive, existentially alone guy who doesn't want to be flashy, just wants to find the bad guy and go home. So it's more personal. But your heroes are ones that we see, either they're in comics or they're in the movies. The comic strips come to life in the movies. they're different. They come from other planets. They come from other places. There's a great short story which I mentioned at some point called Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut. I've done that story. I do it in a lot of my classes. It comes in handy, that darn thing. You should look at it. It's very short. It's easily found online, and it's all about the heroes that that are presented to us, and whether or not they're the ones that we want. I mentioned Superman very quickly because I know this tape is running longer than I expected it to, but very quickly, it's Superman was perfect at the time. Of course, he was perfect for all good and bad reasons. Way back in the 30s, right between two world wars and the Depression, we needed somebody, and here's a list of his qualities. He was noble. He was typically American too, by the way. He was an immigrant. He was orphaned. He was alone in the world. He could do virtually anything. He had a strict and solid moral center. He was honorable. He was self-effacing. He was white. He was male. He was, waspy, if you will. He was rootless, R-O-O-T, like the Westerns, like the cowboys in the American Western. They kept moving. Why would we ever need another hero? I mean, other than changing and adapting ethnicity and gender, maybe, why would we want anybody else? Because he could beat anybody. And he could fly. There's a great article called what's it called? What makes Superman so darned American? It's online too. I forget the name of it. I'll mention it. I'll try to get it to you. But you should look it up. It's a good article. It's just about Superman. But certainly that's changed. He was the only one we needed at some point in history in the early 20th century. 100 years later, again, as I said, a billion heroes all doing different things, and some of them not such great heroes. Which brings up a tiny point, which is also something called the anti-hero. This is what we see in literature a lot. Technically, the anti-hero is the hero that inadvertently becomes the hero and doesn't seem to have any of the qualities that heroes generally have. So typically we totally saw a hero as this big, strong, virile one to beat the bad guy, but the little guy wins, like David versus Goliath. So David was like the original, I guess, or one of the original anti-heroes. We didn't see that coming, but he beats Goliath. And we see this in all kinds of ways in literature, like the nerdy guy gets the girl, or the nerdy girl gets the guy, whatever. We see this, what we don't expect because we're stereotyping. The article that I was referring to, again, real quick, I wish we were in class doing this, it would be so much better. You should read it. I'll just get some quotes from this. There are some critics who argue that superheroes represent a genre of simplistic narrative, completely bereft of any power to sharpen the mind. I think we have to rethink that. Obviously, they're popular enough to make us take notice. It's not high art, but it's making some impact, and that's worth looking at. Every action hero embodies the spirit of the age that he is created in, and as a result is doomed to be a relic of his time. And they mentioned James Bond, but yes, they can change. So again, looking at this as reflective of our time is important. The superhero is something different. It's not supernatural power that makes them popular. It's because those powers represent something. All right, so if they're all pretty much the same moral people, but they have different powers, I mean, we have to start looking figuratively. What does super speed mean for the Flash? What does that mean symbolically or metaphorically for Spider-Man, Green Lantern, all the other ones? What do their powers represent? One might compare action heroes to secularism and superheroes to religion. Interesting distinction. Action heroes deal with immediate external properties of the world. Superheroes deal with the interior elements of humanities. Nice distinction, worth thinking about. Maybe we can respond to that on the board. We put our hopes, fears, dreams, and emotions and all unspeakable facets of human nature into corporal form and loose them in a fantastical world to see what we may learn from them. Again, there's that sense of needing to learn something from the heroes that we have invented. And there's plenty more. I don't want to make this too long. Superpowers are symbolic. There's one guy is quoted as saying, "Man has distanced himself